This is a little haiku. A haiku is a three-lined, it's a Japanese form of poem, and it's always got 3 lines in it and a certain number of syllables. It's the rules, you can't have anything different. And one day I was looking at something very beautiful in nature, and people were rushing by me, and they didn't realize the beauty they were passing by. So this little haiku is thriving in my mind. It's called Stampede. Crowds thronging past me as I stand still to savor fleeting contentment. That's it.
Aunt Mary was my great aunt. She was an eccentric, an artist, very interesting person. I knew her all my life. She drove ambulances in the Second World War. I don't know how, because she was a hugely dangerous driver, but she got an MBE for it. As a child, she was extremely naughty. She got rid of all the governesses until she was finally sent off to boarding school, the first Campion daughter ever to be sent away from home to school. She was sent to Cheltenham Ladies' College.
At the age of 18, I'd left school. I joined the RAF, where I served for 2 years, and after which I joined the army, and a whole lot of us, all young men, finished their training, and we found ourselves down here, New Haven, climbing onto landing craft, and the next stop was Sword Beach. After landing at Sword Beach, we were drafted into the Somerset Light Infantry, and we went into an area dominated by Hill 112, where they'd had very serious casualties, and these chaps there were very pleased to see us. The day I lost my arm, we were advancing on Villa-Bocage, and I was ordered to try and find the company commander because we were being held up. I ran across a field and suddenly stopped because I saw him. At that moment, a sniper fired and hit me in the upper arm instead of probably the middle of my back where he was aiming. Because of my injuries, I lost the lower part of my right arm and had great difficulty becoming left-handed. I actually got into Oxford and qualified as an agricultural consultant. And with that experience and that knowledge, I managed to work in various countries around the world. But before this, I was taught to ride very expertly in spite of my prosthesis, and I did actually ride for the Countess of Devon in various events. In spite of the horrors of war and what I'd seen and been through, there were indeed lighter moments. For instance, we took over some trenches one night facing a downward slope, and my gunner friend was so tired, I told him to go to sleep in the corner of the trench, and I would keep watch. And I suddenly saw what appeared to me to be hundreds of German helmets. So I woke everybody in the neighbouring trenches, and they were all looking out down there. And as it got lighter, somebody shouted, "They ain't Germans, you silly bugger, that's a field of cabbages."
Stephanie's dress, which shows a little bit of a hoop at the bottom, was inspired by a bridesmaid's dress that my mother wore to a wedding at St Margaret's, Westminster. All the bridesmaids' dresses came out in the photographs in the papers as having bare legs, etc. Of course, this was not intentional, it was just how it worked out. My mother spent a lot of time at Danny as a child. I think she was actually born here. In those days, a lot of women went home to their mothers' houses to give birth to their children.
This jacket was made for me in Rome. The material is silk and wool, Italian material, and it was made by a little dressmaker who needed to make money to support her son because she had cancer herself. She made me a number of beautiful clothes, and they were all very acceptable, mostly silk or fine wool. And this is all I can wear still. The dress my daughter has because I got too large for it. Well, the materials in those days were something different from present day materials. they lasted, and they had something about them. It was real fabric, silk, wool, not plastic, not nylon, none of these fancy man-made materials. And it was just after the war, and we were so happy to have beautiful things again. This jacket that Kenneth is wearing is his jacket from the parachute regiment, and it's the actual jacket that has seen active service. He was dropped in Normandy on his 21st birthday, and he's kept it as a souvenir ever since. Kenneth and I didn't meet until after the war, when he had had his university career at Oxford, and he'd also done some librarianship training and was working at that. And we met at a friend's wedding, and it was after that Kenneth went to the Sudan and I went to Rome, and then finally Kenneth came to Rome and we got married, and we had our family, and we've been married for 63 years. So I'm really relieved that he didn't have to use Stephanie's paper parachute when he jumped from the skies in Normandy.
We were certainly pleased that Richard allowed Stephanie to come to Danny and to develop her project here so that we were involved in it. Life at Danny is good for us. We have a happy life here. We have a lovely apartment. We have lovely companions in the village here. So it's
and it was stimulating to have something to do that we ourselves could do.
Yes, offer
with
something.
Stephanie promoting it. When Stephanie came to Danny and we were shown the work she can do and does do, and we were given the chance to help if we wished. And I did wish, very definitely, because I love sewing and I was happy to help her. And so we got into pilling and smocking and all the kinds of things you do for embroidery and sewing. So I started sewing for her. But my first accident with it, or wasn't quite an accident, but she gave me a needle and thread and said, now there you go. You just make some flowers here for me. And I put the needle into the paper and it wouldn't go. It was a hell of a job to get it to go right through. I said, I can't do anything. What do you do? How do you make the needle work? And so she was amused and came over and showed me. And of course the thing worked. And from there on we had weeks of doing sewing with Stephanie. She's a great person and I love her dearly because she is so kind and so easy to be with.
When I was in Canada, or my home country, I was very successful writing books in the educational field. And I retired at 55 and came over here to England. And there I was writing books, so I started writing poetry. And soon I became very, very well accepted in publications of poems. And it was a very happy time. Then along came Stephanie and she said, "What? Show me a jacket, show me this, show me that." And out of that came the printing of the one poem which I'm going to read down the edge of the jacket, all the way down like this, just teeny little print. That's what she wanted. She wanted that idea of the poem on her creation. So this is the poem that I chose to read for her. It was a time in my life when I suddenly decided I was old. I just suddenly sat there and said, "You're old." And these ideas came flowing through. The poem's called Passport to Life. Birth dates, death dates, marriages and anniversaries stamp the passport to life. Monday, April 27. Dated a new but sobering adventure, I realized and accepted with unquestionable finality I was old. The second hand flipped me from certain achievement to indefinite wonderment. The road back, impossible. No exit. The road ahead, scheduled. Arrival on time. So that was the poem in the mood when I suddenly realized I was an old man. Stephanie reacted to some jackets and outfits I showed her, and she sensed that I've always been interested in clothing, and that's what she's picked up and worked in some of the costumes that you will see here. The idea of the male clothes, but they've got a little bit of flair to them. I think that's what she really was wanting to introduce. And boy, do they have flair in those costumes that she's done. They're thrilling. And that's where Oz came in to add some of the colour into the terrific sculpture that Stephanie does of the figures, the outfits, the costumes, the detail, the rich, rich productions. And we're very proud to have been part of it.
And I'm glad to have learned how to put a needle through paper.
Good for you.